Hello, my beautiful bodies. Today we are going to be doing an awesome class for recovery. I'm super excited about it. I'm making videos for you all week and I am excited to get some recovery in. You will need a foam roller for the beginning of this class. If you don't have a foam roller, I do have some suggestions. If you want a foam roller, I suggest starting with a very soft foam. You want to build up your tolerance. I have a very aggressive foam roller, so don't look at this and go straight to this. It might be a little painful. If you have a tennis ball, you can use that. It might be a little intense. Foam rolling kind of feels like you might be bruising yourself for the first couple of tries, but that's just because we're getting blood flow into muscles that haven't had it before. This is really great if you have any muscle pains, aches, anything like that. So I'm super excited to show you some of the stuff that we're going to be doing today. So if you have low back pain, knee pain, hip pain, any sort of shoulder pain, this is the class for you. Now, we are going to start with our foam roller. Now, foam rolling takes a lot of balance, so if you kind of notice that you're wiggly wobbly all over the place, just know that everybody starts off like that. So you're going to start by sitting down on your foam roller, put your hips right on that foam roller, and we're going to kind of scooch our left booty onto the foam roller, and we're going to cross our left ankle on top of our right thigh, kind of like you're about to do a figure 4 stretch, but then we're just going to roll forwards and backwards all over that left butt cheek. So just all the way from that top of your hip all the way to that sit bone. If you feel any tender spots, any bumps, feel free to kind of hang out there and nice and gently roll forwards and backwards on it. You kind of feel around, notice where you feel any tension, any tightness. Piriformis is a muscle that we have that's deep within the body, but it goes around our sciatic nerve. So sometimes piriformis syndrome is actually mistaken for sciatica, and sometimes just some simple working of the muscle can really help to relieve some of that tension on the sciatic nerve. We're going to be here for a little bit longer. Now, if you do this on your own and you get kind of good at it, you can chill here for as long as you'd like and watch TV, do whatever you want to do. And when you're ready, we're going to go ahead and come into our IT band. Now, this can be a little bit of a painful one. It's usually the most uncomfortable, but we have some ways to make it less uncomfortable. So your hands are going to come onto the floor. You're going to roll your hip onto the foam roller. Your top leg is going to come in front of the leg, the bottom leg, and this is going to be used to slide you forwards and backwards. Otherwise, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on that bottom leg, and that's where the pain comes from. So you're going to take your hands, kind of walk them forward. You're just going to slide that leg back and forth onto that foam roller, getting really deep into the side of the muscles. Now, your IT band is not really a muscle. It's more of like a tendon or a ligament. So it's a little bit harder to stretch. So foam rolling this muscle is very important. If it starts to become tight, you start to have knee pain because this muscle attaches all the way down to the lower knee. So it actually compresses that knee joint together. Try to get as close as you can to the joints without ever going on the joints. You don't need to foam roll over bones or anything like that directly anyways. We're obviously on bones, but you want to try to get as close to that knee joint, but you just want to avoid the actual knee joint itself. A nice job. A couple more rolls here. I know it's not the most comfortable thing ever. And when you're ready, we're going to come into the quads. Now, there's two ways you can do the quads. You can do one quad at a time, which is going to be a little bit more painful at first, or you can do both thighs at the same time. So since this is our first time I'm doing this with you guys, we're going to do both legs on the foam roller. So you're just going to come onto your elbows like you're about to army crawl, and you're just going to foam roll all the way from the top of the hip to right above that kneecap. Yeah, nice job. All the way down and all the way to that kneecap. Again, now if you want to play around with using one leg on at a time, see how that feels for you, you can plant one of your toes and kind of roll onto one side and put most of the pressure on one calf like this. So notice how one leg is on there and I'm moving around, or just try to keep both on there. Whatever feels better to just get started. Now, the more you start to get blood flow to these muscles, the easier this gets. That's why you can start to bump up to a more aggressive foam roller and roll on it like it ain't no thing. Nice. And when you're done with that, we're going to go and flip on over to our opposite side for our piriformis. So we're going to take that foam roller underneath the booty, and we're going to go ahead and this time cross that right ankle on top of the left thigh, and we're just going to do that butt cheek on that right side. Nice. Maybe you notice that one side is a little bit tighter than the other. It's a really good way for you to be aware of if you sleep weird, if you tend to walk funny with, like maybe one of your toes points out. Those are all good things to be aware of. You want your body to be as balanced as it can be, but you're always going to have one side that's slightly different than the other. We're always going to have our dominant side. So just rolling all over that right cheek, all the way from the sit bone up to the hip bone. Nice job getting that piriformis. This is also going to help your pelvis be in natural alignment, because this muscle pulls your tailbone. So if it starts to pull under, we round through our back, and that can cause some back pain. So let's move into our least favorite here, our IT band. So let's put that foam roller right in the center of the IT band, plant that left foot on top, and start walking yourself forwards and backwards. Lift it up and back. Now, the more pressure you have on this top leg that's guiding you, the less painful it's going to be on the side of that leg. I know it is not that comfortable. You are doing great, though. Whew. If you find any spots, any tender spots, you can kind of hang out there. See if maybe you can get that muscle to relax or release. And then keep rolling through again, trying to get as close to that knee joint as you can. Ooh, this is my tender leg. Breathing here. Maybe even getting a little bit forward onto the front of the thigh. Nice job. And when you're ready, we're going to make our way down onto our seat. Take a little break from that. Hamstrings. Same thing with the quads. You can do both hamstrings at once. Hamstrings are a little tricky to get here because these are some deep muscles, and the best way to reach them is when you're sitting up tall and your legs are nice and extended. So since we're kind of rounded here, it might be a little difficult. So you're going to kind of lift your booty off the floor and just gently roll forwards and backwards. Now, if that feels like it's no thing, you can take one of your legs, plant it down on the ground, and just do one at a time. And that helps you put a little bit more pressure. Now, the taller you can be with your spine here, and the more you can flex that foot, the more you're going to feel this in that hamstring. But you kind of want to make sure you can relax that hamstring down. I'm going to switch it out just to even it out if you're doing one leg. Let's even it out. Again, noticing here, do you have one side that's tighter than the other? I sure do. Moving through this. And when you're ready, we're going to go ahead and head to the calves. We're going to just put the foam roller underneath the calves. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. If you've got super tight calves like me, all it really takes is just a shifting from side to side, forwards and backwards, just kind of making some circles. I can already feel this in the thickness of my calves right here. This is your gastrocnemius. Now, you also want to get all the way down to the Achilles tendon, so you can kind of roll it out. You can lift your booty off the ground if you'd like for more pressure. But like I said, for me, all I really need to do is just kind of lay here and wiggle my feet from side to side, and I can already feel those bumps of those tight muscles. Now, this is going to help if you have heel pain, if you have any sort of Charlie horses, if you wake up in the night with those cramps in your calves, this is great for that. This is really going to help that blood flow get to those calf muscles. You can even turn your toes out and get a little bit more in towards the outside of the shins. Beautiful. And when you're ready, we're going to go ahead and take our foam roller and do some less painful things. We're going to take that foam roller and put it right on our sacrum. Now, your sacrum is right above your low back, or right above your tailbone and right below your low back. So kind of feel around on your spine and notice where that big bone is that goes right across your hips. That's where we want the foam roller to be. So we're just going to lay our hips down on that foam roller. That feels nice. We're going to just roll it forwards and backwards all the way to the tailbone, all the way to the low back. Maybe you kind of shift your hips from one side to the other. And then let's get a little bit deeper. Go all the way to the low back. And then this time you can kind of tilt to the right, get to the side of the spine. And the side of the other spine, nice. Beautiful. Now, there's some things that I like to do with my foam roller that isn't exactly rolling, but it's great for stretching purposes. So now, what's going to happen here is when that foam roller comes under my sacrum, I'm going to start to lower onto my elbows. And if that feels okay, I'm going to come all the way down onto my back. And if this feels okay, we're coming into what we call in yoga as a supported bridge, but with our foam roller, we're gonna let the legs out nice and long. Now, what we're doing here is we're pushing our low back forward and we're letting our hips rest down. So this is gonna help with our alignment of our low back. It's also gonna help open up our psoas. That's our hip flexor muscles. They're responsible for lifting our legs upright, but they're also a very big stress holder in our body. They're our flight response muscle. So we hold a lot of stress and tension in our hips, and it's just nice to lay in this extension of the spine. This is also great if you have herniated discs, bulging discs, anything where your spinal fluid is being forced backwards. This is going to help push it forwards. We're helping to open up the spine, even though I know it feels like sometimes that's a forward fold. What you really want is an extension in the spine. So when you're ready, let's walk the feet back in, gently come back onto the elbows and then onto the hands, and we're gonna move on to the low back. So we're gonna take that foam roller, and now for this one, this takes a little bit of core work. I like to take my hands and cross them over my shoulders and kind of round forward as I go all the way up to the shoulders and then just below the rib cage. So you don't need to go all the way down, just to the end of that rib cage where you're nice and supported. Roll it forwards and back. Nice. Now again, I like to do a little stretch here. So as soon as that gets right to where your bra strap would be, you're gonna drop, or you're like where your bra attaches, you're just gonna drop your booty down and you're gonna let your upper body relax over the foam roller. Now I'm very aware that I have a very flexible back, and some of you might be up here and wondering how the heck you're gonna get your head to touch the ground. It takes time, it takes practice, but you can also take a pillow or a blankie and stack it underneath your head so that you have a little bit more support. And then the second option for this stretch is another great way to open up the shoulders. We're gonna turn our foam roller vertical. So straight up and down. And what we're gonna do here is put it right in between our shoulder blades so that my head can now be relaxed. I'm not pulling my head back, and you can take your arms out nice and wide and feel really nice opening through the chest here. We have these tiny little muscles in between our rib cages, and when we sit hunched over, whether we're working or driving, or maybe we just have a little bit of a little low self-esteem, these muscles become tight, and it prevents us from taking nice deep breaths in. So while you're in this posture, I want you to take some nice full deep breaths. Let those shoulders rest. And again, if your elbows are really far from the ground and you're feeling like you're kind of flailing, take some blankies, take some pillows, and lay here. I'm teaching you tools. This isn't necessarily something that you have to follow along. If you want to stop and pause and hold, if you found a spot that you're like, this is amazing, hang out there, feel into it. Every body is different, so we just want to make sure that we are taking care of what your body needs. Awesome. And then we're going to go ahead, rise up. We're going to take that foam roller and place it to the side, and we're going to start our stretching portion of the class. Now, I really enjoy foam rolling first because I think that it really helps to stretch things out and get the blood flowing. And then you'll notice that like you get into some of your stretches and you'll get into them a little bit deeper than you thought you could get into. So what we're going to do first is a stretch for the hip flexor. And as I was saying, this is a really great stretch if you have low back pain. We're going to come into a modified lunge. Now, also an option here, I enjoy taking a blanket or a pillow and just placing it under my kneecap, just because everything is tile here in Arizona, so we want to have that knee be supported. Nice. Now my knee doesn't go past my toe. It stays either behind or stacked right on top of that ankle, ideally stacked right on top. And you want to let your hips sink. So I know our instinct is to kind of hold it together, but just let the hips sink down. If you need a chair or a wall, find that nice deep breath as you let the hips sink down. Feel that stretch in that left hip flexor. This is a great stretch for low back pain. Option to stay here. Some of you might want to take your right hand on your left hamstring and reach your left arm nice and high and find a modified exalted warrior. If you do yoga, push that left hip forward. Feel that nice, beautiful stretch in that back bend. Nice. And on the exhale, let's come into some half splits, hopefully gentler than what I just did. Right toes are going to come up towards the face. Now, if you have blocks or books that you can stack or anything like that, we're going to grab those just because it's very important that our back is straight here. So that knee comes on the towel or the blanket. We're going to straighten through our right leg. Now, I want you to be lifted through the upper back. The hamstring muscle attaches to your sit bone. So if I'm rounding here, I'm actually shortening my muscle. I want to pull my booty back and lengthen through the spine. So if that means you have to have 500 books stacked under your hands, that's what you're going to do. You're going to lengthen through the spine, and then you can start to bow the head forward towards the knee. But notice how my hips didn't change. I'm not rounding. I'm pulling that booty back. Think Beyonce booty. Stick it out. Bring the right toes back towards the shin, and find some nice deep breaths to try to relax your body. Nice deep breaths as your mind is relaxed, as your body is relaxed, and you start to get deeper into your stretches. Maybe you kind of rock that foot from side to side. Feel those nice deep stretches. Ah, how nice. Maybe you bend a little bit and sink back into it. Maybe you get a little bit deeper this time. Again, I'm giving you tools for some great stretches, so feel free to stay in them as long as you'd like. We're going to move on to our next stretch, a pigeon stretch. So you can do this in a modified version that is laying on your back, crossing the ankle on top of the thigh like we did earlier, grabbing for that thigh, or maybe you just even take a block and stack it under that foot so that you have something to step on if you already feel that stretch in that right hip. Option 2 is we're going to come into half pigeon. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that right knee up towards the right wrist. Now, in most yoga classes, they're going to tell you that your leg needs to be parallel to the front of the mat. That's just not accessible to most people, including myself. My right foot is close to my groin, but my right foot is flexed, meaning my right toes are being pulled back towards my shin, and I'm lowering my hips down. Now, I'm not rounding yet. Options to take a block and place it underneath the hips. Notice I have a blanket there for support also, and when you're ready, if you'd like, you can lower down onto your elbows and then start to relax into this posture. Let the hips sink down towards the floor and breathe here. Find those nice deep breaths. This is that piriformis stretch, that piriformis muscle that we were working earlier. This is going to help the pelvis. This is going to help the hips. This is going to help with those rotations. If you notice that you walk with duck feet where your toes are out and your heels are in, this is the stretch for you. Find those nice deep breaths. We're almost done here. And like I said, you hang out and have these stretches however long you like. If you found a stretch that really resonated with you or really felt great on the body, then start implementing it into your life, especially before or after your workouts. Let's go ahead and switch it out. If you're on your back, you're just going to switch out your ankle that's crossed on top of the thigh. Bring that left knee towards the left wrist. Slide that right leg out nice and long. Now my left side feels way different than my right. So I would probably hang out here more on my left side just in case you were feeling kind of the same way. If you have a muscle that feels a lot tighter than the opposite side, you just want to give it a little more extra love and then one day hope that they're balanced out. And they won't do that if you spend the same amount of time on both legs. So you're going to go ahead and just sink into this. Start to let the hips lower down onto the heel. Keep that foot nice and flexed for that left leg to protect the knee joint. And what that does is when you flex your foot, you engage the muscles around that knee joint. So it gives your muscle or your knee joint some stability instead of having just kind of your knee being pulled apart. Your flexed foot will help the muscles to maintain that grip in your joint so you won't do anything crazy to that knee joint or that hip joint. Beautiful. A couple more deep breaths here. And when you're ready, we're slowly going to come on out. I'm going to slide this blanket out from underneath me. And we're going to come into thread the needle. This is a really great shoulder stretch. And what we're going to do is going to come into all fours, hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. We're going to reach that left arm nice and high, and on the exhale, that left hand's going to come behind the right wrist. My left shoulder is dropping all the way down to the floor, and my head's coming down to the ground. Now, for some people, you might feel like you're falling forward, so take your right hand, reach it forward like a little kickstand, and use that pressure of your hand to push your hips backwards, and then relax over that shoulder. Maybe even think about trying to slide that right shoulder a little bit closer towards the floor to get a little deeper into that left shoulder. Fingers and palms up towards the sky for that left hand. Keeping those hips over the knees, relax the head down onto the ground. One more deep breath in. And when you're ready, we're going to take that hand back underneath the shoulder, find our tabletop position, and switch it out. Right arm reaches. Slide it underneath to drop that right shoulder down. Reach that left arm forward. Use that left arm to sink those hips down. Now notice here, if your feet start to cross each other, Try to see if you can pull them apart or at least let your toes gently touch to each other. Notice how that feels differently in your hips. Right palm up towards the sky, maybe that left shoulder comes down. Find those nice deep breaths. And then we'll take that left hand underneath the left shoulder, come back into our tabletop position. And we're gonna come into our final stretch. So for here, we're gonna take our hands, interlace them behind the back and puff up the chest. If that's not accessible for you, you're gonna turn your palms out and you're gonna lift your chest up and squeeze your shoulder blades towards each other. If you have that grip, you're gonna squeeze your palms towards each other. You're gonna rise up onto the knees, option for that blanket underneath the knees if you need to. Push your hips forward, squeeze your shoulder blades together, and take a little back bend. Shine the chest open, squeeze that booty to protect that low back. Beautiful, lower the seat down, keep the arms bound. Maybe rock the head from side to side. Get a nice stretch in that neck, move your head over to the right. Maybe release the hands and take your hand up and grab for that neck. Nice gentle stretches, stretching all the way down from our feet to our head. Beautiful. And that is it for your recovery class. You guys feel as time.